know, it's kind of hard to believe that it was just about a year ago that we were here delivering our first results from the community demand model work, as it really just, I think, kind of feels like yesterday, but I have to give some credit to, I think, the fact that StratIS has become part of our everyday conversations, our everyday vernacular as we're talking about data in Chesterfield. So I'm very excited to share with you this afternoon some great updates and initial results that we're seeing from the student forecast work that's happened and recently just been presented internally. So elementary schools, jumping right in, is projecting some moderate growth, overall just shy of 8%. However, that growth is mixed. So we're looking in a little bit deeper. This is, again, very high-level results, but trying to gain some insight as to where that's happening, why that's happening, you know, what we're seeing within the elementary space. Because among those 39 elementary schools, just about a third of them are seeing a slight decline in the student population for that geography that they're located within. Our middle schools are projecting to see the most significant growth over the next 5-year period. And so I think that, you know, intuitively we have felt that, you know, information that we're seeing as it's been presented previously as well through our last run of the model had shown the pressures on capacity within Tomahawk and Falling Creek. Those schools were elevated to a priority at which we're now seeing them come to fruition to address those capacity concerns. But looking more holistically across all middle schools, I'll give you a little bit bigger snapshot in the next slide, but definitely seeing the growth in student population among those school areas. And then just really of significance to note, despite that drop we saw during last school year, we are back on track. So, you know, looking at pre-pandemic, our long-term trend is continuing forward. And so that trajectory is still hitting the mark of what we were anticipating, where we were anticipating to be. Again, this is a snapshot into the results, just a quick kind of set the base. This is not indicative of capacity problems or issues or pressures that we're seeing, but rather just a pure result of the model outputs. And so the darker the red, the higher growth that we're seeing in students who would be living within these areas. So we will take this information, develop some more analysis, evaluate in more detail, and deliver some insight into this data that helps us understand what type of issues or things that we need to be examining further. Then, you know, looking forward, next steps with StratIS, we've engaged with the Microsoft partner Catapult again to develop a model that will support parks and libraries. Our fire folks, we've got great data fire folks on staff who've been working intently with our IST data team who have gotten very close to delivering their model results that we're excited to see. And so that information coming out together will be presented in a refreshed version of the demand indicators report. That report will also include a publication of the approved housing pipeline database. So I think we all are, you know, pretty familiar with that information. It's additional data set of information that we look at as we're, you know, evaluating needs and programmatic services across the county, but, you know, having that insight into new housing development as they are sitting in that pipeline in the 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 5+ year time frame when we could expect those units to drop. So we'll have a automated process that goes along with that, updated monthly, online, published in our report. So come January, February timeframe when we present the proposal CIP, you'll have an update with that report and access to that information in a more real-time format that I think everyone will be very excited about. The public facilities plan update is underway, so we are working in tandem with the planning department to make recommendations in coordination with other departments. I think we've met with just about every department in the public facilities plan as it exists today, and reviewing the standards and the requirements and the information that's included there to help, you know, provide that guidance that also gives some flexibility in for us to make decisions on what it is that we need to do to be serving the community for the future and not having any limitations or things that are going to provide us with some obstacles to achieving those things that we need to get done. And then the last thing kind of last thing, Tina, to leave you all with, but as I am transitioning into a new role and the life of StratIS, the work that's been done here kind of programmatically here on the business side, we've had conversations all along. Budget and management has been a partner in this process, and so they will be, really taking over me working closely with Gerard to help coordinate that strategic oversight with our IST data team. Nancy Tickle, Trip Ray, Art John are all fantastic partners in this. They have provided, great support. We have very talented resources across this organization. Shane Hill and Logan Ashby will be running more day-to-day oversight on the programmatic pieces and how we operate StratIS and using the data that our data team is harnessing the power in behind, the infrastructure building and making that data accessible across our organization. So, I think that there's been just very exciting work on this front. Our organization has really taken a hold of StratIS, using this information to the maximum ability that we have. We're delivering results to our community in a way that we haven't been able to before. So, all of that is, I think, an exciting time to be moving this program forward. There's a lot of momentum in we all feel that for sure. So just shifting gears, slight, non-StratIS related, but this evening, you're going to take action on the 2022 legislative program. Just a quick reminder on that. On October 27th, there was a work session to review the draft program. We followed up on November 5th at the County and School Liaison meeting, and through those discussions at that time, there was a topic that we came collectively around regarding state funding formula and state staffing formula. And so, collectively recognize the power to go together on these topics and how we can, pursue and advocate for the state taking accountability for those obligations in which they've identified. So, looking forward to working with Sean more closely on those topics as well. And then, once approved, that final package will be presented to our delegation during the December 15th legislative reception. So, before I turn it over to Gerard, are there any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. Any questions, comments?
School numbers that you brought up earlier, and certainly that's the projections of what we think students could be within the school system. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because I know that we, as an example, recently approved another private school in Chesterfield County, which will probably have 100 students per grade, which could actually take 1,200 students away from our public schools. And I think there's another one, if I remember correctly, there's another private school that may be considering coming to Chesterfield. So when we look at these, do we look at the numbers and what our private schools are actually taken into consideration?
So we've pulled private school data from VDOE. The issue that we're running into, and that there's limitations on the depth of the data that we can get from there, as we don't know where those students are coming from. And so we are, going to continually look at our model and the results and the way that information, it's, the basis of the inputs on the model, student addressing data, housing data, live birth data, for things that we know in Chesterfield, predicting the growth of students within that defined geography. And so, yes, to your point, there certainly could be some students living within those, within Chesterfield attending those private schools. So we're keeping a pulse on it, but we're trying to figure out the best way to pull in that additional analysis.
And how about the homeschooling numbers?
We have more detail, and we've just been able to access that recently, and so we're going to pull that in for additional analysis.
I mean, I think it's important that we have all that information, because when you look at that, that's a startling number to go from 62 to 67, or almost 68,000. But again, we need to make sure we take into consideration that some of those projections may actually end up being homeschooled or actually in private school.
I will also add, Mr. Carroll, too, one of the things we're trying to embed in is the career technical centers. Those school students have a homeschool assignment, but again, these facilities, as we're trying to maximize their use, actually, again, if they house 2,000 students, just as a rough estimate, and we have a total of 20,000 high school students, then 10% at any point in time are not in a home school. So we're trying to work better with the schools of understanding the initial home schools for each of those trade and technical centers, because that takes pressure off the homeschool when they're not there.
Don't get me wrong, I think this is a great program. I just want to make sure that these other factors are looked at as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I would add too, we've never been able to really dive into the data in this way before. And so we're at the point that we can ask better questions. And so with that ability, it gives us better insight to ask those better questions. So thank you for that.